All right, this is the next episode of True Wrestling Fan Discussions and continuing our The Adventures of Hulk Hogan series. This is going to be the Bash at the Beach 2000 fiasco. I'm your host, Mike.
I'm Frank. Man, let's just jump into this. There's a lot going on here between Russo, Jarrett, Brad Siegel, Eric Bischoff. It's just you name it, we got it going on. Now, everybody knew at the time, July 9th on 2000, Bash at the Beach, Hogan was challenging Jeff Jarrett for the WCW Championship. Now, prior to this, Hogan had spoken to Vince Russo about where does he see his character going. Russo tells him, honestly, bro, I got nothing for you. Which, and Hogan had said this as this huge, big writer that came from WWE. If you're standing there and telling me a guy like me, you have nothing for me down the road, then that's not saying much to you as you as a writer.
Yeah,
And so the fact that to me, Russo telling him that tells me that he doesn't see him in the future plans and he doesn't want him there.
right.
So with this happening, with Hogan, what Hogan did, and we'll get to it in a little bit with the creative control thing. I think honestly, in my opinion, Hogan did that to save his ass and to keep him relevant in the company. Because if he goes by how they want to do this, then he's fading into the sunset after July 9th.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, pretty much.
So I don't
Um,
blame him for doing this, but
well,
everybody has a
well,
blame in this.
apparently, the story goes that Russo had it that Hogan was not going to win the title no matter what, and that eventually, whether it was that night or another night, Booker T would be the champion.
It was going to be that night.
Right.
That's
Well,
what he wanted.
but that's what he wanted. But apparently, we're gonna get into that later on. Apparently, Hogan and Bischoff did not know that that was gonna happen that night. So, but apparently, Hogan had agreed that he wasn't gonna win the title that night, according to Russo, and that that Friday he had agreed to it. But by Sunday, that wasn't gonna work for me, brother.
Actually 30 minutes after the office closed. We'll get to that when the
Yeah.
deposition part
Yeah.
comes up. But
So,
Hogan knew damn well nobody was going to be in the office when that fax went through.
right, right. So,
Come on, you got to know that. We'll get to that.
yeah.
So at this point, Hogan had gone to Brad Siegel, wanted it to be taken. He wanted to be released from his contract. Siegel told him no. Now, in my opinion, if Siegel can't, and again, I'll get to this later. If Siegel can't afford to put you on TV, why
Right.
won't you? Why
Why
won't
won't
you
you release
release
him?
him?
Why won't you release him? Yeah, you just don't want him going to work for the competitors or somebody else. So
Exactly.
I don't.
So eventually, it's going to come down to Siegel just tells Russo, "F it, just give him the title." Again, we'll get to that in a little bit. But actually, I'll get to that right now. Why not? So Siegel had informed Russo and Bischoff that Hogan had a creative control in his contract, of his character, of his being, of the match, everything.
Well, they knew that he had creative control.
Well,
That was known.
they knew, but he up until this
Yeah.
point he never used it, or supposedly never used
Supposedly he
it.
never used it, and
I think he has
right, more than likely, yes.
on more
Whether
than one occasion.
whether he outright said it or kind of insinuated it, we have to imagine this isn't the first time that something didn't work for him,
Exactly.
right? So supposedly Bischoff is the one that told Russo Hogan's using his creative control. So as far as I understand.
Yeah. And I mean, Hogan was adamant. He tells Bischoff, tells Siegel, "I'm taking the belt off
And
him regardless."
this was the day of. This is the day of Bash at the Beach.
Yeah, because according to Russo, he writes Bash at the Beach.
Yes.
He gives it to Johnny Ace, Johnny Laurinaitis.
Right, the go between.
Yep. And he presents it to Hogan to get either the thumbs up or the thumbs down.
Yeah.
So the first time he writes it, he gets the thumbs down. All right, no problem.
Right.
He rewrites it. According to Russo, he goes, "I made him look like King Kong."
Yeah, he destroys everybody. I think he destroys Steiner.
Steiner, Jarrett, everybody.
Yeah.
He looks like $1,000,000,
Right.
but he does not come out
Right.
as champion.
He protects his character. He just doesn't have the belt.
And
Right.
Hogan approved it. He
Right.
said, "Okay, thumbs up."
Yeah. But by Sunday, Bash at the Beach.
20 minutes later, supposedly, when everybody's left the office and they're heading down to, I believe it was in Jacksonville,
Mm-hmm.
a fax comes into the office where they're not going to see
They're
that
not going to
fax
see
until
that.
Monday
They're not going to
morning.
see it till Monday. You know what that sounds like? That sounds like he was just trying to create a paper trail so that
Yes,
he
to
could use
cover his
it.
ass.
Yeah. Well, I told him, I notified him, and that's what it sounds like. I don't put it, and
No,
I don't put it
exactly.
past him.
It's
And,
exactly right. Because
and
obviously, you could call him
you can call
and say,
him,
you know
right,
what,
right,
I
right,
thought about
right.
it.
I thought about it.
It's
Yeah.
not going to work.
Right, 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 right. Yeah.
So Russo goes to the bash,
Not
assuming
knowing,
everything's all as well.
right, walking in there blind. Yep.
And Bischoff comes and runs to him
Yes.
and says, "We've got a problem.
Yep.
Hogan's not going to job to Jerry."
Right.
Okay. They go to his trailer,
Yep.
and they go to his trailer. Russo, before he even went to the trailer, he was adamant about having the show go the way he wrote it
Right.
because before, and I'll go back to the Hogan trailer in a minute. Vince goes to Jarrett and says, "Screw him, lay down, let him cover you, and get the 1, 2, 3."
Yeah, I don't
Okay,
know. Yeah, right. That conversation happens. I don't know when that happens, if it was before the meeting or was after the meeting.
No, it was after.
Okay. All right.
So we jumped the gun a little bit
No
there,
problem. No problem.
but because I'm going back and forth from the
No
bash
problem.
to Russo's side.
We have to get back to that though, because I have something to say about that.
Yeah, the three men met in Hogan's trailer.
I think Siegel's on the phone, I think, right? I think
Yes,
Siegel might
he's
have
on.
been
He's on conference
because he's like he's above all of them.
Yeah, and if anything, if this can't be worked out, the final say is going to go through him.
Right, right.
So Hogan and Bischoff tell Russo, like you just said, we got Brad Siegel, and he's okay with all of this. They tell Russo what they're going to do that night in regards to the title match. Russo said, as Hogan is laying out the match, he's thinking a plan B in his mind.
Yes, yes.
Because in his mind, he's not leaving the champ. Booker T is. He claims that Hogan told him that if this was a shoot,
yes,
this is how it would go down.
Mm-hmm.
Russo told him, no, if this was a shoot, here's how it would go down.
Right.
And he stated everything that happened that night, word for word.
Right. If we are to believe Russo, but continue.
Exactly.
Right.
He explained word for word to Hogan everything we witnessed that night, exactly what did happen.
Right.
So apparently he's still not. He's not. It's not going to work for him.
So apparently, after that, everyone's kind of on this. Hogan's not happy, but they're kind of on the same page. But Russo decides to tell Jeff Jarrett, screw him, just lay down, because he wanted Jeff Jarrett to have a real reaction, emotional reaction, like, man, this guy's not going to put me over. I'm just going to lay down. He didn't wizen Jeff up and tell Jeff, like, this is all a work. This is not a shoot. Okay, this is part of what we're doing. But he wanted a genuine reaction. He didn't want anybody in the building to know, because he had it in, again, if we are to believe Russo, he wanted everybody in the building other than them, other than Hogan, Bischoff, and Siegel, to think that this was real. Mm-hmm. So if we are to believe Russo, he didn't tell Jeff, not because he was screwing Hogan, but to keep Jeff in the dark. That way Jeff would look like he was really legitimately pissed that Hogan would not put him over. So that's what happens. According to Russo.
We can only report what they claim they say.
Right. Yeah.
So now we get to the match itself. When the match began, like you said, Jarrett laid down. Right. Russo's at ringside.
Did he throw the belt?
He threw the belt in the ring. Shows it to him. Throws it in there. Hogan asked Jarrett to get up. Jarrett's telling him, I'm just doing what I'm told.
Right.
And Hogan puts his boot on Jarrett and gets the victory. Now, before he pinned Jarrett, this is where it gets fun. Right. Hogan gets the microphone and addresses Russo, and I quote, "Is this your deal, Russo? That's why the company is in the shape it's in, because of bullshit like this."
Right.
He puts his boot on Jarrett. Mm-hmm. Referee counts to 3. Jarrett rolls out of the ring. Hogan grabs the belt, what he claims is the real belt.
Right, but it wasn't.
No, because the next day he says, "Well, I've got the real belt, and they've got the carbon copy."
No, he had the copy.
And Booker won the real one.
Yeah.
So Hogan walks out, throws the belt, and he gets told in the back, brother, you need to go. You need to leave. Because the next thing I'm about to address, if he was there for this, wouldn't have gone well. Because Vince Russo comes back to the ring and says the following, and this is all word for word. I did not change a word. I did not do anything to it. This is exactly what he said. All day long, I'm playing politics with Hulk Hogan because Hulk Hogan tonight wants to play his creative control card. And it's funny because I'm Italian and so is Vince Russo, so the accent's coming out a little more,
Yeah,
so I'm trying to mimic him
but he's from
again.
Long Island though, so it's a
Yeah, he
little.
don't count. He don't count.
Yeah.
To Hulk Hogan, that meant that tonight, in the middle of the ring, when he knew it was bullshit, he beats Jeff Jarrett. I'm getting mad like him too. What is this?
Oh.
Well, guess what? Hogan got his wish. Hogan got his belt, and he went the hell home. And I promise everyone, or I'll go to the goddamn grave.
Yeah.
You will never see that piece of shit again.
Man.
Now, I'm going to say this right now. Him doing this, he thinks he's putting the heat on himself. He's burying himself at this point. He should have never come back out this night. This should have been addressed on a Nitro, if anything, or like he did a month later. This buried him.
I mean, it kind of put the heat on him, and people didn't like him to begin with. I mean, I get what you're saying. Storyline wise, had they done the original story that Bischoff claims was the original story, I think it does work. But considering where it went, it doesn't work.
No, it doesn't.
Right.
Because people now, they don't know what to think of this night. Like, did we just witness something real? Or is it
right.
Storyline?
Okay. So this is where we're gonna jump all over. We're gonna jump.
Oh yeah, unfortunately, this is what. Yeah,
right, unfortunately, because it's hard to tell the story. It's hard to tell the story like cohesively, I guess.
Yeah.
This is where the discrepancy comes into play because Russo shot on Hogan, according to him, but it was a worked shoot, right? Mm-hmm. Some of the stuff he was saying did happen. The creative control, that's real.
Yeah, it is.
But the piece of shit never coming back, that's supposed to be a work.
Yeah.
So there's a big discrepancy because Bischoff claims that he knew that Russo was going to go back out there and do that. But Hogan says that he didn't know that Russo was going to cut the promo, and Bischoff claims that what was supposed to happen was there was supposed to then be a tournament. So Bischoff claimed that what was going to happen was Hogan does get quote unquote stripped of the title. There's a tournament. It culminates.
Yeah, even though he claims he's still the world champion.
It culminates at Halloween. Hogan's going to be gone this whole time.
Yeah.
The tournament culminates at Halloween Havoc. They hadn't decided who was going to win. It was going to be a heel versus a heel. Before that match for the vacant title, Hogan was going to come out to the ring and say, "No, I'm the real champion. I never lost this belt. I beat Jeff Jarrett for the title." This is according to Bischoff. I don't think I've heard Hogan say this. I don't think I've heard him say it, but according to Bischoff, Russo.
If they had this storyline in play in their mind, why tell Hogan after Bash at the Beach, "I have nothing for you," just for him to go home until then?
Right. Yeah, that's okay. Yeah. But then the other thing is too that Booker T says that he knew that he was going to win the title the night of Bash at the Beach. He said that.
Russo said he had it planned that there would be another title match that night.
He said they called me, and when I forgot who asked him, he says, "Oh, I don't remember." Which I would have to imagine it was Russo that called him and told him, "You're going to be the champion." Russo claims that they knew that part. Hogan claims that he didn't know about the shoot, and he didn't know Booker T was getting the title. But
who knows? Not knowing anything right now.
Nope. I mean, yeah. Apparently, nobody knows anything.
Well, they're not going to defamate their character at this point to tell you the truth.
I mean, remember you got to think about this. We're trying to put this whole mess together, and Hogan is a known liar. But then again, Russo's kind of a known liar too. But I think Hogan might be the bigger liar. But I mean, who do you believe? But Russo and Bischoff tell a very, very, very similar story outside of that whole tournament thing. So I think Hogan did know that. This is what I think. Hogan knew that Russo was going to cut that promo, but he didn't know how scathing it was and how bad it was.
Yeah.
And then he got upset. I think Russo worked himself into a shoot, and then it turned real. I think that's what happened, and Hogan to a degree. there's some conflicting stuff because Hogan on the Bubba Love Sponge show a couple days later, maybe in the day after.
It was the day after he did
Right.
this.
He goes on and he says that he was there for half of Russo's promo and he was going to go out there and kill him, and that he was told, no, you got to go home. You got to go home because I forget what was. Do you remember what was the reasoning why they said that he had to go home? I don't know if it was to prevent a lawsuit or something. I don't
Yeah,
know.
because apparently he was going to kill him.
Right.
I don't know if
Right.
I think his son was there with
Right.
him,
His
which was
son
the
was
other
there, and that's
reason.
why he got upset. But Bischoff said that they left right after that. That they never heard the promo.
No, he
That
never
they
heard the promo.
that they know. So, but Hogan is saying that he heard the promo. But Bischoff and Hogan left together. Bischoff is saying they never heard the promo. They left. They found out about the promo after they took like a 45-minute plane ride to whatever part of Florida they were going to, and that's when everybody was blowing up their phones, calling them, voicemails, everything, and that they never heard the promo, and that Bischoff was, I'm sorry, that Russo was never supposed to cut that promo.
And what's funny is when you mentioned the radio interview, Russo believes that 10 hours after when he did that radio show,
Right.
Hogan that Hogan was working the
He
angle,
was still working the angle, which
and the radio host believes Bischoff helped Hogan concoct that whole thing. Like he believes Bischoff was in the background when he was doing that interview.
well, Bischoff hated Russo though, so I wouldn't be surprised if he was. Bischoff leaves right after this.
Yeah, with Hogan.
Yeah.
So if they took the ride home and then the next morning did the interview, it wouldn't be a surprise to me that Bischoff told him
Yeah,
exactly what to say.
because Bischoff and Russo got into it that day. And Bischoff apparently Bischoff had told Russo, "Don't start the creative meeting without me." And Russo already started the creative meeting. So by the time he got there to the arena for Bash, the creative meeting had already started. I don't know, man. I don't know. This is like a mess.
There's a lot of things that Hogan says that you can't you got
It's
to take with a
hard,
grain of salt because
right?
remember he also stated that stated that the Kidman feud that he said that Billy Kidman beat him 2-3 weeks in a row. Meanwhile, one on one was only once that he beat him, and that was on April 24th on Nitro in a handicap match.
But
Bischoff counted to three. That was it.
right,
So
and the other thing with Bischoff is that Bischoff did agree with Russo. Bischoff tells the same story. He said they didn't tell anybody in the locker room, and they stormed out of the arena angry because there were too many leaks. Like Dave Meltzer was getting a hold of inside information,
yeah,
posting. So he had to make it seem like it was real. So I think Russo might be telling a lot of the truth. I think.
I believe so because 20 years ago or some could be a little less than that when he gave his first interview on this. From what he said then to what he says
It's the
now
same.
hasn't changed.
No, it's the same story. He's telling the same story.
So the only thing that made this worse was the fact that he didn't call him, and we'll get to that in a little bit.
All right. Go ahead.
Let's
Continue.
let's go ahead and now let's fast forward to the next morning. Russo's reading that Russo put Hogan in his place. And now he's hoping that Hogan is reading this because the first thing that popped in his head with that is, oh, we've got a Hogan and Booker T versus Jarrett and Vince Russo because Russo, they said, got one over on him. So he claims that, now he claims, but I believe it's true.
This is Nitro you're talking
This was the next morning when on the internet.
about? Okay.
This is everything is said. When he got to the office on Tuesday now, after the bash, he had every intention, he said, of calling Hulk Hogan and talking about where they go from here. Siegel calls Russo now into his office and says, how'd you leave it with Hulk? He said, I'm supposed to call him today.
Yeah.
Siegel tells him, you can't call him because I can't afford to put him on TV.
Right. Because he got like some crazy bonus every time he showed up to TV.
Yes, and he, according to Hogan, he really only had 4 mandatory dates left.
Right.
And one of them was a major pay-per-view towards the end of the year.
Yeah.
So I think it was something in the excess of like 670,000 if he would show up on Nitro. So Russo didn't make the call, and as a result of that, Hogan sets out to Vince Russo and to Turner Time Warner. They were hit with a defamation of character lawsuit, which was ridiculous.
Yeah.
Because he loses that and the appeal, and you're not going to get it when the judge refers to you by your wrestling name, not your legal name. He didn't say Mr. Bolia, Terry Bolia. You know, he said
Well,
Hulk
the
Hogan.
well, the whole thing, yeah. Russo, when he was cutting those promos, he was calling him Hulk Hogan. He wasn't calling him by his real name, so it was within
The
storyline.
defamation
You
goes
can't
to
say
Hulk.
it. You can't say it's a defamation of character. You're not going to win that case be-
Exactly. And when he
because
appealed it, he lost it again.
he lost it again. Apparently, he does. There's another part of this where WCW did settle with him. They gave him some money, but the defamation part, he didn't win. He didn't win that.
No. So I mean, imagine, and I said this before. Imagine Russo makes that call. They somehow work this out. Hogan returns to TV, and you got the neck. And he and Russo said this on the show. We've got maybe 6 months of a storyline between the four of them that could just bring back the ratings. You know, the Bubba was saying
Well,
how, oh, you have a year. No, you don't. This is not a year draw out, but you
I
got at least 4 to 6 months.
I don't think there was any saving WCW, but I do think that
At
as
least
far
bringing
as
the ratings up before.
yeah,
I
like
mean,
point one, yeah, we probably would have point one, but at that point, but I actually
well,
thought this
considering
could,
how everybody was the day of and the next day, I mean,
yeah, I thought this could have led to a good storyline. I'll put it to you that way. I don't know if it maybe a short term bump and
no,
it went better.
yeah,
Either way, I thought this was actually making. They could have made a good storyline out of a bad situation because that would have been actually. I thought it would have been really cool if there's a new champion that's crowned and then Hulk Hogan shows up. That actually sounds. I don't know about you. To me, that actually sounds like good booking.
it does. And then you have Hogan with the belt. You got this
Right,
champion
who's the
with the
real
belt.
champ? It's kind of like Shawn Michaels, Razor Ramon, right? That whole
Yeah,
thing,
WCW
the
style.
IC, yeah, with the IC title and all of that.
Yeah, and you know you have the match at Starcade because
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
your biggest pay per view. Because if you're going to crown the champion at Halloween Havoc,
right.
let Mayhem go. They do this in the main
Yeah,
event at Starcade, and I guarantee
yeah.
you,
And everybody,
you put it in a venue that you can sell out 60,
and
70,000
you,
fans.
and you know what the thing about this is that everybody is after this whole mess. Everybody's on those guys. They're all unemployed because Hogan's gone, Bischoff's gone, and then shortly after that, Russo's gone.
Exactly.
Yeah, so it's like it didn't work out for anybody. Like
And
that
then the
was
inmates were running the
all
asylum, and
right.
then
And then they
all
went, and
finally
then this,
broke loose.
yeah. So
Then the storylines WCW goes back a decade, and you're back to strap matches with Dusty and Dustin Rhodes, Ric Flair. I mean, it just went chaotic at that point after this.
yeah, yeah. I mean, Jesus, but. I mean, this was just again, I feel like they got worked into a shoot. I think that
Yeah,
I gotta lean towards Russo. Maybe, I mean, he was
I am
the booking was not. I'm
because
not talking about the booking.
go
The booking was garbage. The booking
yeah,
was garbage. But as far as what actually happened, I gotta lean towards Russo because his story actually does make sense to me. Whereas Hogan's is like,
it's
Bischoff's
got
kind of
holes in it.
yeah, Bischoff's kind of contradicting.
Bischoff's working the puppet.
No, but my point is that that Bischoff and Hogan weren't even on the same page. Like they're supposed to be on the same page, but Bischoff's making contradicting statements and actually backing up Russo in certain circumstances. So do we believe that they knew that Booker T was going to win the title that night?
According to Russo, that was always his plan.
But
That
Bischoff,
after that match, they would have an impromptu title
right? But
match.
Bischoff and Hogan say they didn't know that. So it's a matter of who you believe in that circumstance. I don't know. It's tough. Would they
Well,
leave?
considering he wrote Bash at the Beach by himself, he wrote it, and that was his vision at the end of the night. I have to side
So
with. Of course, they didn't know because Russo's the one that wrote it.
I if I had to guess, I think that it's possible that Russo did keep them in the dark about Booker T winning the title that night. Like, he
I
told them
believe
everything
so.
else, so it's feasible that that part of the story is true. At the end of the day, Hogan hated Russo and Bischoff hated Russo, so they have every reason to kind of twist the truth a little bit,
The
So
one thing that puts Hogan in the doghouse with me on this is that whole thing with the facts. 30 minutes
yeah.
after
And Hogan's
the office closes, and you know
dude, Hogan's a politician.
that they're not going to see it. Exactly.
Hogan's
Like you
smart.
said earlier, a paper trail. Oh, well, I
Yeah,
told them.
yeah,
But you did it in a third grade fashion. Rather than call them and say, you know
yeah.
what, this isn't going to work.
That's it.
When you get to Jacksonville, let's talk it out.
Because this is what I think that Hogan did. I think this is what he did. He knew if I show up the day of, I'm gonna back Russo up into a corner and he's just gonna cave. and say, you know what, I'll put the title on you, and we'll figure everything else later on. Figure out everything else later on.
Worst
And
case, I mean, worst case,
Russo didn't go
he
for
takes
it.
it off him the next night.
And Russo didn't go for it. I think that's what happened. I think he could have. He thought he could back Russo into a corner,
Yeah, no.
and Russo pretty much stuck to his guns, and then the whole thing just imploded.
Because what happens here is look at it like this: if he finally gets back into a corner and he caves and gives Hogan what he wants, every other superstar in that
Yeah.
locker room is going to want to do the same
Right.
thing
I mean, the only thing
or
was that
try to do it.
Hogan had creative control, but the thing is, this is what I don't understand about creative control. He wasn't the champion. Jeff Jarrett was the champion.
But he has control over the match that he is in.
I understand that.
Regardless if he's champion or challenger.
But I don't think creative control goes to the point where you can say, "Oh, I'm winning the title this night."
Apparently, to Brad Siegel, it does because he said he's got it. Give it to him.
No, but he didn't put the title on him.
No, he didn't because
He didn't put the title on him.
Russo stuck to his guns regardless of what Hogan wanted.
Yeah, but remember, Russo did not go over Brad Siegel's head. Brad Siegel and Russo were on the same page. So that's my point. I think it only went so far, So
this is why I said this is Montreal WCW version.
Part 2, yeah. Well, that's our episode on the Bash of the Beach, man. You guys please comment and let us know, who do you think's lying, who do you think's telling the truth? Do you think it was good booking? Any other comments? Because it's a really interesting topic, and it's still talking about.
I applaud Russo to sticking to his guns and.
I do. Yeah, balls. You got to give him that though. Like,
yeah, he did.
For him to tell Hogan pretty much to piss off.
He told him, "Screw you, f you, my show, my way."
Right.
You don't like it? I quoted what he said. There you go.
That's it. So you guys let us know what you think. Please like, comment, share, subscribe. We'll see you guys soon.
Take care.